Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So I guess first I wanted to ask you what it was that spurred you to take this on as a project.
Yeah, sure. We had heard a lot of conversation about what was going on with these buildings, and we realized that there really wasn't any concrete data available specifically about the subject we were looking at, which was historic, purpose-built religious structures.
Okay.
We didn't know how many. No one really knew how many of them were still standing, what condition they were in, how they were being used, and their impact on civic life. And the organization that I run at Pew, the Philadelphia Research Initiative, we're set up to look at topics, issues that are that are facing the city, to address them, to help citizens and leaders understand them. And these buildings are part of the civic infrastructure in a number of ways, and we thought that was a good topic for us.
So it looks like it took several years to do the research and then write the report.
Yes.
And were there, I have questions about the individual findings in the report, but I wanted to ask, just sort of generally speaking, was there anything that came out of this that surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that surprised me, and maybe it shouldn't have, is the extraordinary number of the buildings that are still in religious use that are now occupied by congregations other than the ones for which they were built.
Right.
We found that I think it was 378 out of the 839 are in this category, and that's almost half of the ones that are standing, and it's more than half of those that are still in religious use. Anyway, that surprised me. Obviously, I know that happens, but the volume really struck me as surprising.
Anything other than that?
I guess that was the main thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
It seems like, from what I know, just from my own research and stuff, it seems like a lot of the buildings were once synagogues and are no longer synagogues. Do you have any information on that particular?
I thought you might ask that question.
You came prepared.
So as you see in the report, and again, these are, say, historic sacred places, meaning that they were built prior to 1965, which was, essentially 50 years ago when we started thinking about it. So as we say in the report, we found 13 historic sacred places that are currently used as synagogues. In addition to that, and I did this count last night, so it's I would say there are roughly 45 buildings in the city that were formerly used as synagogues that are now that are still standing and are no longer synagogues. Now,
okay.
A few of them, looks like 4 or 5 of them are vacant. But others, quite a few of them are churches, and there are a few that have been used for non-religious purposes, but a lot of them are churches.
Right. And at least one mosque.
Yeah, and the one we mentioned in the report that was one time home to Temple Sinai is now a mosque.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting, and I know you're I appreciate your having that information because I know this report is not Jewish specific, but of course that's what our readers will definitely be interested in.
Of course.
The B'nai Abraham, choosing that as one of the 22 places, how was that choice made?
Well, I mean, that was actually made by the researchers who did this from Penn Practice,
Right.
and the Partners for Sacred Places. You know, there wasn't any particular rationale for picking that rather than another synagogue. You know, we understood, you know, we took a sample and we understood that putting that sample together, put together a sample of 22. They were selected because you know, we're trying to get diversity in terms of geography, racial and ethnic makeup, architecture, history, and denomination, with the understanding that a sample of 22 out of 839 was not going to be representative in every respect.
Right.
Obviously, the vast majority of these buildings are churches,
Right.
but there were no particular, you know, so they, you know,
Right.
You know, and actually all but 18 out of the 839 at the moment house Christian congregations. So, you know, out of the 13 that are synagogues, we picked one. They picked one.
Right, got it. I thought it was interesting to read about the way that when a neighborhood changes, basically when gentrification happens, you know, you guys talk about the way that
Sure.
a lot of the long-term residents who live in a neighborhood leave, and then so an original house of worship is, you know, no longer their like community hub, and
Right.
and then it seems as though when new people come into a neighborhood, and often people who have higher incomes than the original residents, it's not like they're creating new houses of worship. And it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, well, first of all, I just wanted to say that you know, our research found that neighborhood change of any kind sort of kind of threaten the stability of a historic sacred place. And obviously, it's not just gentrification. It can be the economic downtrend and deterioration of a neighborhood, too. And obviously, that's, in a lot of ways, historically, that's happened a lot.
Right.
But, you know, one of the factors that is sort of, we talk in the report about factors of resilience, factors of vulnerability for these buildings, and one is, you know, the general decline in religious attendance. You know, but so I mean that's obviously a factor, and I think you're right that in some of the, you know, we are seeing as neighborhoods change, you know, some buildings being taken over by new groups.
Right.
But that's, you know, it varies tremendously from one neighborhood to another.
Right. And it seems like, yeah, I mean, that trend overall, I mean, it's interesting. I thought it was very useful to read about all the different ways that these buildings make a difference, you know, because, I mean, I don't think we necessarily realize what the kind of role that they play in their communities, but you guys outline that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's, you know, obviously they provide meeting spaces for organizations. They provide space for child care centers, you know, and a number of services like that are not just for their own members, that are for the community. And physically, the buildings are important to a neighborhood as well. I mean, they're landmarks. They are often sometimes the largest building in a neighborhood, particularly in a residential neighborhood. If they are in good shape, they can be an anchor for a community. If they deteriorate, they sort of can reduce the, can be sort of cast a pall and reduce the value of everything around them. So, I mean, they're important.
You also mentioned in the report that some of the challenges in terms of preserving or the existence, I guess, the resilience of these sacred spaces is the lack of legal protection in Philadelphia, including, the lack of historical designation for a number of them. Do you feel like this is something that should change?
Well, we don't make recommendations in the report. We just sort of pointed out that, I should say, that 79% of the buildings don't have a historical designation. Right. And when there is a historical designation, that at least that gives the opportunity for, it provides an opportunity for time, sometimes for people to try to figure out what to do with the building and things like that. It's not, it's not a panacea. But again, right. We don't make any recommendations in this report.
Was there a particular reason for not making any recommendations?
No, that's just what we do. I mean,
right.
We were set up as a pure research organization within Pew. We like to provide fact-based analysis of the issues that
right.
guide, inform a public conversation. But in all the reports we've done, we have never made specific recommendations. We don't advocate for solutions. Sometimes we point out ideas that are being pursued in other areas. We did that briefly in this report right at the end,
right.
where we mentioned some arrangements in a few cities in New York and Miami concerning development rights sometimes and what's done with them, with some incentive legislation that's on the books in Los Angeles, a few other things, but we don't make any recommendations. We just sometimes point out what other places are doing.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I anticipated having more questions for you, but the report is really very thorough.
Yeah, I mean, I think one other thing that's interesting. I think that the reuses of the building is pretty interesting. We found that about 10% of the total buildings that were still standing as of early 2016 when this actual visual survey was done, that 82% of them had been, 82 of them had been repurposed, and it's quite a variety of things. There was 17 as multifamily residents, another 7 actually as single-family homes.
Right.
Some were schools, some were preschools, some were child care centers, art and culture centers, service agencies. A few places have been converted into office buildings. And we sort of say in the report that obviously that's something that we may see more of.
Right. Is there any other sort of kind of building in the city that would be comparable in terms of buildings that no longer serve the same purpose that they once did? I mean, as a group, as a type.
Well, actually, we have actually done a few reports on school buildings.
Okay.
I think they are they're different, obviously, in that they are public. They're public facilities, and obviously these religious buildings are not. But we've done a number of reports about what happens. Philadelphia has quite a number, and I say we've done some reports, which I can refer you to, of shuttered school buildings.
Right.
And we have written about how they are used and reused, and we've written about how they are repurposed in some other cities. And I'd be happy to send you the link to those.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay.
And they are similar in the sense that, they tend to be relatively large buildings. They're often old. Their structure sometimes makes certain uses, available, some not. And they are often the biggest building in the neighborhood, especially in a residential neighborhood. So the community cares what happens to it. But anyway, we'll send this to you.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think that's the size of these buildings, I feel, is part of what makes, figuring out what to do with them a challenge when they are not being used for worship or school. I mean, it's the same,
Yeah, we discussed that in the report. I mean, that it's both the size and the configuration of the building that matters. And that the research showed that the ones that have been most likely to be reused are a kind called, stacked rectangle. And stacked rectangles are basically, and they tend to be not relatively small, but and they're usually churches, obviously, where the sanctuary is kind of, you walk up the stairs to the sanctuary, and then sort of below the sanctuary is a floor that's typically offices and maybe the kitchen and stuff like that. That relatively simple construction has, based on what we've seen, has lent itself better to reuse than some others. Obviously, buildings with soaring ceilings and particular religious shapes present different challenges.
Right. All right. Well, is there anything else that you would want readers to know about the project, or?
Well, I mean, one thing that struck me, and that I don't know, is that we said there were 839 of them, which is one for every 1,900 people in the city. People have asked me, well, is that a lot? And basically, we don't know, because as far as we know, no one else has ever done a study like this. It feels like a lot, but we don't know. But I don't know. It was pretty striking to me. One for every 1,900 people.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but and I don't know either. Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have Liz's?
I have it, yeah.
I'll send you the links to those reports about shuttered schools.
Okay.
It is kind of similar.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you both very much for taking the time.
Thank you. Let us know if you have any other questions.
Okay, I will.
Do you know when this will come out?
I think a week from today.
Okay.
If all goes well, But yeah. Oh, and I guess. I'll contact you. I'll contact you, Liz, because I might want some photographs.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, and
let me know. We can also provide, if you want some of the charts as well from the report, I can provide those.
Okay, yeah, we might want to do that, yeah.
I just need the specs. So it's just, I guess if you have an art department, or if I just need to know like what the specs are, because our designers will make them to your specifications.
Okay. All right, well, I'll shoot you an email about that then.
All right, perfect.
Thanks, Liz.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks. Have a nice day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.